Hey guys, so I'm gonna be explaining to you what really happened before the outbreak, during the outbreak, and after now, the few days after basically the quarantine. So, China, Wuhan, the regional government already knew in December what they were dealing with. They basically sequenced the genome already in China and in the region they have their own laboratories and they isolated the virus, so they knew that they have a new strain of coronavirus going on, but the authorities gave everybody the direction to stay quiet. They kept everything secret. All the doctors, all the nurses were supposed to not talk about it. They were not allowed to talk about how they treat people, how they're working with it, everything. And so during so the WHO didn't know about this. They didn't report it to the WHO. They didn't report it to the international community. They kept it all for themselves, the regional government in Wuhan and the province. So basically, that went on until the end of December, and then there were the first cases. And then during the first 1.5 weeks, 2 weeks in January, they basically said there is no human to human transmission and there are no new cases. Don't worry about it. So they basically started planning all their festivities and their local meetings, political meetings, all this stuff, and they were mostly concerned with that. While basically people were starting to get infected and dying, and the hospitals were lacking materials and masks and all kinds of other stuff. So they were under tremendous psychological stress. Of course, they're still under tremendous psychological stress. It's really apocalyptic right now in China, and I'm going to explain exactly why. So, what happened is that 2 weeks in the first 2 weeks of January, they were saying, "Oh, there are no new cases. Okay, don't worry about it." That's what the official government was saying. And then the local government officials, they had kind of like a party going on, a banquet, and they heard somebody made a video of it and leaked it on social media, and that video got released in all of China, and people get super mad, super mad because they were fighting the virus in their city, and people were dropping everywhere, and people were going to the hospital. The hospitals couldn't take care of everyone, and the basically the party officials, the Chinese officials, they basically were just partying, and that video got released, and people got super mad. So they kind of felt, okay, now we have to do something, and but they were dragging their feet. They really don't want to do that. And then the other cities were pressuring on Wuhan to finally do something about it. And so they first then it was already too late. Then the case then it basically already exploded, and suddenly they installed a quarantine at 2 a.m. in the morning, and a lot of people found out about this, and they about 1 million people left during the morning between 2 and 10 a.m. 10 a.m. was the official quarantine for the city, 11 million people. And then tons of people left already being infected all over the provinces, the cities, everyone was leaving. And of course, during that night, a lot of people didn't know this. They were maybe sleeping, whatever. And so that was the situation. So 2 weeks, the government, sorry, almost 2 months, the government kept it completely quiet, completely secret. They already had the genome sequence. They were already knowing what they have there. They already knew they have a new coronavirus, and they were not telling anyone about it. And when two journalists then come into to Wuhan, they basically they said, government officials should be, replaced, and this was a horrible, way of reacting on things, and all this stuff. Then these journalists were had to come in and apologize, and they're gonna face now some other problems, legal problems. Maybe they go to jail. And there was a second journalist, a female, that went into the same kind of problems with the Chinese government. So basically, they were all forced to stay quiet. Nobody can talk. They delete everything from social media. And then the Chinese, because they saw that everything is being deleted and erased, they're starting to change their language so it doesn't get hit by the filters, by the the Chinese social media filters. And social media in China is very closely monitored. So No information is coming out. Very little information is coming out. The doctors and the nurses are absolutely on top. Of their, there's like super limit because they don't have supplies. They cannot take off masks because if they take off masks for eating, then they don't have enough masks. So in order to try to save masks, they even eat less because if they take off the mask, then they would have to throw it away, and they don't have other masks. Now, the most so that is the incompetence of the Chinese government, and it's pretty obvious to say why it's happening because it's the new Chinese, the grand Chinese, the new nation, the resurrecting Chinese power, and suddenly there's something that's not under their control, and it's something that the Communist Party doesn't want to hear. Nobody here there wants to hear it, so they kept it shut for over 2 months, and then after they weren't able to contain that information anymore through social media, then they had to install their quarantine. And so we have a situation where over 50 million people are in quarantine, locked up in 16 cities. And here comes the most important part for right now, is that there's no plans, there's absolutely no plans, and there's nothing being done about bringing in supplies to the large cities like water, food, medical supplies, all this stuff, masks. And so it's normal that the medical staff, the nurses and all and doctors, that they're absolutely at their limit as to what they can bear in those hospitals, because I mean doctors and nurses, they love to help, but if they don't have the materials, and they cannot eat because they cannot take off the masks, so they're at their absolute limit of what they can bear. And the Chinese government doesn't know what, there's like no plan what they should do with that. So basically the people are just surviving in their isolated in their homes for a few days, because during the Chinese New Year they bought enough, in the festivities they bought enough food and stuff so they can survive a couple of days. But in a couple of days they're gonna have to come out, and the supermarket shelves are empty. Prices are exorbitant. So what are they gonna do? They're gonna, of course, try to break out of the city. So you're gonna have infected people all over the place. They have no clue what the fuck they should do with this, and then of course all hell will break loose, because as soon as you overextend the medical capabilities, then of course and the people cannot go onto ICUs, intensive care units, then basically the whole thing will totally collapse in itself. And so it was basically the greediness of the Chinese government to keep everything secret and quiet because they want this new grand nation of China. This is the real truth of what has happened. So it's not like they didn't know what to do because they already had the SARS virus, but it's like they reacted way 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 too late. And the interesting thing about this, they already knew it since the beginning of December of this virus. They had it already isolated in December. They were already working on it, and they knew they had a new type of coronavirus, and they didn't tell the WHO or the international science community that they have this shit going on. So only in the second or third week, I believe it was like the 21st, January 21st, somebody could tell me exactly, but it was definitely after January the 11th, so somewhere in between, they let the WHO know of what they actually have. Why their responsibility would have been to already do that in December when they were already working on isolating the virus. So basically, you could say that it was that fake pride, that ego of the Chinese government and the wrong political system that made this much grander and made it explode much more than was necessary. And this extra month or these extra 40 something days was something that the international community desperately needed to prepare for it already. So that is the absolute truth of what happened before the outbreak. Now there are many ideas of how the outbreak happened, or was it really the bats combining with the snakes or whatever, because they both carry the coronaviruses. Was it the lab that's 20 kilometers of the epicenter? Was it that, or ground zero? So we don't really know. And are some Chinese guy saying something. I don't understand what it is, and I honestly, I cannot help right now if you speak Chinese. And what really needs to happen is a kind of social it needs to happen like a resurrection of coming back to to a kind of more humane way of governing, because to just ignore people like that for 2 months is unbelievable. And especially since there's like this national pride that we can take our care of the problem on our own, when you know that there are like technological facilities all over the world, biotech labs that can take care of researching with you. So they should have told the WHO much sooner. And I mean, I don't want to discuss about what's right to eat, what's not right to eat. I mean, we as Westerners, of course, have a different way of seeing that, but the Chinese also have a different way. But I think we need to come back to a hard-based way of dealing with animals and with nature. And the Chinese really haven't been doing that, and a lot of Westerners haven't been doing that as well. So it's no wonder that these things are creeping up on us now, because we've been ignoring the science for way too long. And we've really seen since the end of last year, we've seen so many crazy things going on, so many questionable like changes in nature, in society, and it's culminating. It means nobody's watching. Okay. Okay, well, whatever. The thing is that even if you wanted to, you cannot keep the stuff secret. That's the thing. That's exactly what China tried to do. They tried to keep it secret. They tried to keep it secret in Wuhan, and it didn't work out. So the information is gonna come out, be it me or someone else. It doesn't matter. And what else? Yeah, so it's very likely that China will completely collapse right now, because if there's no plan on what to do with these quarantine, if they don't know what to do with these quarantine millions of people, then there's going to be a full collapse. And we have two human to human transmissions already outside of China, which means that the virus is highly contagious. And that means that in China, where people will come out panicking, it will become even worse. Yeah, so before and after Wuhan, and you cannot keep that stuff down anymore. I mean, that's really the upheaval that's happening in the world, with all the social media and with all the spiritual changes, with our astrological, cosmological changes. Everything is starting to open up, and everything is starting to and a lot of people are sick of it. They like the Prague mayor also said, I don't want to have to the Prague mayor also said, we don't want to deal with China anymore. So a lot of stuff is happening. According to the info out there, the coronavirus is 80% similar to SARS, which is a mixture of measles and worms. They don't mix in nature. It has to be lab-made biological weapon. Well, like I said, that would be a conspiracy theory. Was it the lab? We know that from Canada there was this Chinese couple that they exported. They were smuggling some viruses to the Wuhan lab in 2017 or 2018. So we already know that that's not secret information, and if that's related or not, we don't know. But you can pretty much assume that they're mixing coronaviruses. Why not? I mean, I'm pretty sure that they're trying to come up with their own kind of mixes, so they try to understand what happens when they mix coronaviruses. But I don't know how the actual original spread happens. It's possible that they are testing on animals. They just throw out the animals in the backyard in some dumpster instead of burning them, and then bats or something chew off of those cadavers, and that's how the virus gets into circulation. It's possible that it came from that level 4 lab, but I'm not an expert on that, and I don't subscribe to many conspiracy theories. So I just wanted to tell you the truth of how China handled the outbreak, and that it's gonna get much worse now. Cause a global problem and then solve it sounds familiar. Um, okay. So it will be very interesting to see if that information will start to spread, especially the hidden information of the incompetence of the regional governors and authorities, and how that is now affecting the rest of the world, and especially China. I mean, people are not going to take this shit for longer. Like even the Chinese, I mean, they're not dumb, so they won't take this shit for longer. And they've been left 2 months alone, and now they're being left alone in these quarantine cities. So I wonder when really a lot of information will start trickling out, because at some point it has to. I mean, we've seen people falling on the street in subways and supermarkets, just falling, and just not getting up. So it's a pretty intense virus. So I'll let you alone now, and if anything new comes up, I'll let you know.